Bay Area Baller back again. I'm joined by my man Rohan. Stay tuned because we're talking all things 49ers. You're not going to want to miss it. Hey, what's going down? Ready to talk some ball? Rohan, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. Great day and great time to talk 49er football. Stuff is brewing. How are you, man?
Hey, I'm feeling good. And we had some action. 49ers made a move, started off by signing wide receiver Marcus Johnson. So when you heard that news, Rohan, what were your thoughts and what do you think about Marcus Johnson?
Yeah, so I mean, immediately, right, what I was thinking was this is exactly the wide receiver news I wanted to hear from the 49ers today. Man, all that Debo Samuel talk, put that in the back burner. We got Marcus Johnson in the business, guys. That's what I was thinking. But I mean, talking real, Marcus Johnson, I thought that this is essentially a training camp body where you have a guy who recently played for the Tennessee Titans, before that played for the Indianapolis Colts, had 9 catches for 160 yards last year on pretty good yards per catch. So he had a good amount of volume last year in the limited time that he played.
I'm sorry, say that
19
again. How many balls did he catch last year?
He caught 9 passes for 160 yards. Played in 7 games, started 3 for the Tennessee Titans. Obviously, when they had the injury issues with Julio Jones and AJ Brown, where they were starting players like him and Nick Westbrook-Akeen. So he definitely got some playing time in a way last year. But in my opinion, the value that Marcus Johnson's going to bring is on special teams. Returned 9 kicks last year for 179 yards, around 19 to 20 yards per attempt. I think that's pretty good. And really, I think the impact of a guy of Marcus Johnson, if he makes the 53-man roster, isn't him necessarily, like his play necessarily, but for Ray McCloud, a guy we'll talk about later today. Ray McCloud, the one issue that people have brought up around him is his fumble issue. And so I think that if you mitigate him specifically to punt returns, where he was among the top in the NFL, especially in the amount of times he returned it and the amount of yards that he gained on those, I think that you can have him specialize on punt returns. You don't necessarily have to have him do kick returns and punt returns, specialize, potentially drop some of the fumble concerns, and you have a guy who can kick return now in Marcus Johnson. 2 key special teamers and both with the potential to play wide receiver. He is 6'1", 207 around, but he's got the ability not only to be somewhat of a deep threat, ran 4.39 at his combine day in 2015, but also can high point. And I think that that's a good two-way kind of bag that you could have as a wide receiver, at least in this room. I think that it provides depth and at least a body for training camp where you compete. Or we saw guys like Trent Sherfield win last year.
Hey, you hit on all the points. Yeah. I feel like Marcus Johnson, he's kind of a do-it-all guy, maybe a master of none, but he can stretch the field, like you said. He ran the 4.39, and he's got some size where it's like you can have him run routes over the middle where,
Right.
some of the smaller, like if you put like a Calvin Austin, right? Like Calvin Austin, everyone loves Calvin Austin on 49ers Twitter. But
Right.
I don't know how many times I want him running over the middle right into the neck of linebackers. Yeah, it seems a little risky. But Marcus Johnson, he's 6'1". And when I was watching the film on him today, he's thick. He's got a muscular build.
Right.
So I really like Marcus Johnson in the sense that this guy's going to be our wide receiver 4 or our wide receiver 5. And I think he's going to be a darn good wide receiver 5 for this team.
And the one thing I'll say about Marcus Johnson signing, I like the way in the direction this team's going when they're accumulating training camp bodies. Who are we getting last year? Mohamed Sanu, who's 31, 32 years old, on the verge or on the edge of his career, whereas Marcus Johnson's entering his prime. And I know you might not say, wow, prime for a guy who's a replacement level player. Well, guess what? He's only 27, 28, has a good amount of tread on his legs, hasn't been utilized as much. So that's what the 49ers need, available bodies who could potentially make the 53-man roster and at least provides you with another receiver. Because right now, who do you have? All you got is your top three in Debo, you got Ayuk, and you got Jawan Jennings. And then now you have Ray McLeod, but you also need more bodies. You need to carry 6 on the 53-man roster, probably bring in more during training camp to compete. And that's what the 49ers have been doing. Brought in Malik Turner and Marcus Johnson for a visit, ultimately signed Johnson. So getting another body here. So that's kind of what I like about this move.
Interesting. You know what? I was curious and I didn't have time to look it up. I was like, how many wide receivers did we keep on the roster last year? So right now it looks like we have 5, and it sounds like you're anticipating we'll keep 6.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't even know if Marcus Johnson's the 6th one, but he at least can compete to be one of those guys.
Absolutely. And we still got, as we're going to get into a little draft talk later, we still got room for maybe a wide receiver to draft or 2. But I want to get to the next topic. And, man, it's been a hot topic. Deebo Samuel, right? He unfollowed the 49ers on Instagram, removed the profile picture. Rohan, I want to ask you, what does this mean? Is Deebo getting shipped out? What's going down? I'm getting kind of hyped up. You might need to cool me off a little bit.
So, I mean, obviously, when we get news like this, when's the last time we've heard Deebo Samuel in the news? It's the last 3 times John Lynch has said Deebo and Nick Bosa are going to be 49ers for a long, long time. So obviously, when you go from a state like that, where we're in pure confidence that Deebo Samuel is going to be a 49er, to a state like this, where out of nowhere, Deebo Samuel not only unfollows the 49ers, but removes his profile picture and then scrubs 80 posts off his Instagram account, all resembling the 49ers. I think that this is I think fans do have a right to be concerned. All the people that are saying, guys, why are you overreacting to this news? I don't think that that's necessarily the case here. Just a month ago, we saw Kyler Murray do the exact same thing, and Twitter went on a rant on Kyler Murray just because he did the same thing. His agent posted a statement saying Kyler Murray wanted to be paid. All of his stuff is now returned, and people it's okay to have a similar reaction to that just because this is the first time we've heard Deebo Samuel's name outside of he's going to be a 49er for a long, long time. Now, am I concerned right now? Not necessarily to the extent that Deebo could potentially any imminent thing about Deebo Samuel is going to occur. But here's what I'll say. If the 49ers are going to move Deebo Samuel, it will be by the draft because the 49ers, what is the main place that you can replicate or at least somewhat produce Deebo Samuel's production of last year? That's by adding players in the draft, at least one of the high caliber guys. And I know we'll talk receivers later. One of the higher caliber players, maybe a Christian Watson if Trey Lance really wants that, maybe a Garrett Wilson, whoever it may be. But really, if you don't see Deebo Samuel being moved by the draft, I think there's a little bit of an increase that the 49ers have belief that they can get an extension done. I don't think that this really is a complete snag. I don't think there's complete tension between the two sides to warrant a trade yet. And I do think that at least come training camp, there will be a lot more talk on it. I think right now, Deebo Samuel, I think he still remains a 49er. It's just a way in which wide receivers are getting a lot of guaranteed money. Deebo Samuel might want that guaranteed money in his pockets. And the 49ers, they negotiate these deals near training camp. So that's where we'll get a bigger prognosis and really a full idealization of whether Deebo Samuel is going to be a 49er for a long, long time, like Lynch is saying. But that's kind of my initial thoughts on it.
I loved it. And let me tell you what I'm thinking with this scenario, Rohan. I think it's all posturing. All right. What I think's going down, Parag is crunching numbers, right? Like his little nerd self. And they're saying, okay, we want to offer Deebo 21, 22 mil. And Debo's saying, no, man, I deserve 28, 29 mil. So they're going back and forth in the negotiations. They're difficult. It's Deebo wants to get paid, right? He hasn't gotten that huge chunk of change yet. So Deebo needs to kind of voice that he's unhappy with how the situation's playing out. This is my opinion, and I'm speculating, first off. Let me mention that. But I think Deebo's just trying to prod the front office a little bit, like, don't play with me. I'll start causing drama if you really want me to, but just give me my money. And I think they're going to find the sweet spot. somewhere between, the 29 that Debo wants and the 21 that Parag's trying to offer. So I think ultimately they're going to settle in right around 25, 26 mil per, and we're going to get this deal done because you cannot keep on trading away all pro players. I was
Right.
absolutely livid when the 49ers traded DeForest Buckner. I was so pissed. I don't care. Armstead, Kinlaw, give me Buckner over that. But no use crying over spilled milk. We're moving forward. But you cannot continue to do that. You have to lock up your all-pro players. Debo Samuel needs to be and will be, in my opinion, in a 49er uniform for 5 or 6 years to come.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And the thing is, like, the 49ers, right? Let's go back to the DeForest Buckner time. What did we do when we traded DeForest Buckner? We drafted for need, right? Immediately, who's on the board at the time we drafted Javon Kinlaw? At pick 13, before trading back, Tristan Wirfs was on the board. All three of or two of the top three receivers, in my opinion, the two better receivers in CeeDee Lamb and Jerry Jeudy were on the board. And I mean, we got the receiver in Ayuk, so we're fine in that aspect. But we had guys on the board like a Tristan Wirfs who would have significantly helped our offensive line at the time. And I think we passed on those guys because we had a dire need at the defensive tackle position. Hence why we drafted Javon Kinlaw at 14. And I think that if you trade away another all-pro player, guess what? That makes the 49ers prioritize the wide receiver position over other positions when there might be better talent at pick number, whatever they get in the draft if they trade Debo Samuel, right? Like, let's say, just like, I guess, conspiracy wise, because someone likes conspiracies, let's say the 49ers trade Debo Samuel to the New York Jets for pick 10 and pick 38. At pick 10, there might be one of the better cornerbacks on the board, like a Sauce Gardner, like a Derek Stingley. There might be a better player on the board, but the 49ers might go wide receiver over the better talent just because they have a need. And that's what they've done over the past couple of years, right? Going back to 2017, Solomon Thomas, a pick of need. 2018, Mike McGlinchey, definitely a pick of need over the safeties that we got. Like, who was there? Derwin James at pick 17. We could have gone safety there. That was the better player, but we went with Mike McGlinchey, who was a need. In 2019, Nick Bosa, even though he was the best player on the board, that was still a need. And then wide receiver was a need that year because we lost because of Emmanuel Sanders. Because we just didn't have wide receiver talent that year. So we drafted Debo Samuel that got, and then the 2020 year when we got Kinlaw, guess what? Brandon Ayuk filled a need as well because at receiver we had lost Emmanuel Sanders in free agency. We go up, we trade for a receiver. That one hit though, but we draft need early when we have a position of need that needs to be addressed. So that's the one concern that I have should the 49ers trade Debo Samuel, because not only do you have to replicate the insane production that he did last year, you have to make sure that these draft picks hit, and they don't necessarily do that all the time when they select need over best player available. And that's one concern that I have.
And I hear you. And what you mentioned the Jets, and that seems to be the team that people are drawing direct connections with, right? We know Robert
Right.
Saleh and that staff has the connection with Debo, and they have the ammo, they have the draft picks that could potentially be enticing to John Lynch in this front office. But man, I heard they were offering their 2 second-round picks for Tyreek Hill, right? Like 2 2s and a third is the report that I read for Tyreek Hill. And I'm not doing that. 2 2s and a 3, like, no way. Like, they would have to step up their offer significantly for me to even consider it. I mean, and I'm talking, you give me I think they got the 4th pick. I need that pick. You want Debo Samuel? I need the 4th pick and more. And to be honest, I still really don't want to do it. But I want to pull up Michael Miller. What's up, Mike? We can't pay Bosa and Debo. I feel like I disagree with that. I think there's a way to contractually structure these deals where we can have both of these players, especially first and foremost by getting rid of Jimmy Garoppolo. Now you could actually give one of these guys some money up front instead of backloading everything like we know the 49ers like to do. Right. But hey, you free up 27 mil, 25 mil by getting rid of Jimmy. Now you can pay one of them up front and you pay one of them, down the road. And I think there's a way you can work it out. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, like when we hear John Lynch's words, right? He's not lying. The 49ers have a budget. So I do agree. I do think that they can pay both players. I do think that Nick Bosa might not warrant a contract this year, but I do think that both players will at least the 49ers have the ability to pay both players. It's just a question of will they actually go ahead and do that?
Yeah. And let's keep it moving. Sounds like we don't anticipate Deebo Samuel moving anywhere. Uh, let's move to the 49ers and who we
And this
think
is a
is going to
question I
be
really like. Yeah. So
who's going to be the breakout player for the defense, Rohan?
I want to ask you first. I want to see what your thoughts are because I know that you really, really like a guy that I know has some high potential to that can be untapped. So, who's your breakout player on defense, Eric?
Man, I'm going Kevin Givens. I've liked Kevin Givens the last few years that he's been on this team. You know, the snap count's been relatively low. Like he tends to play, 30% of the snaps. And I think this is the year with the departures of Arden Key and DJ Jones. I think Kevin Givens' snap count's going to increase and his production is also going to rise. Because when I watch Kevin Givens, man, this guy is just a playmaker. His acceleration at the snap of the ball is just so phenomenal. He's squeezing between the guard and the tackle. He's shooting right past these linemen untouched practically. And if you don't believe me, watch the highlight video that I just put out a few days ago because you'll see it on the tape. Kevin Givens, I think he's going to be that NASCAR defensive tackle that's going to be lined up between Eric Armstead and Nick Bosa, and he's going to wreak some havoc. I'm expecting, similar sack numbers to what Arden Key produced last year, 6 or 7 sacks and some QB hits. So I'm going Kevin Givens. And I knew you knew I was going to go with that Kevin Givens pick, Rohan. You knew that was coming. So I'm also throwing you one more. All right.
Go for it.
I'm throwing you one more. And it's Jordan Willis. Jordan Willis is a guy, if you check out his combine, this guy's combine was off the charts in terms of bench press, 40-yard dash, 3-cone. I mean, his measurables were absolutely insane.
Right.
And he's a guy who I thought was continuously getting better towards the latter end of the season. I think Coach Sarek is going to keep coaching him up. Jordan Willis is a guy who I think is he might be, Ebukam's there. He's probably the front runner for, pass rushing situations opposite Bosa. But I think Jordan Willis is also going to get a share of his snaps and really surprise some folks with the production he's going to put up.
I think both are good selections. Just talking about Kevin Givens first, right? Kevin Givens had the biggest snap count of his career in 2020 in his second year in the league when we had the huge injury issues, right? And Eric Armstead hadn't slid inside because of the edge concerns with Nick Bosa being out and D Ford being out. So Eric Armstead was on the outside, Kevin Givens on the interior. He played 47% of the defensive snaps. And I mean, he showed out, right? In his second year, he had 5 tackles for loss in that period of time while playing specifically like as a nose tackle alongside Javon Kinlaw. And 47% of the snaps, that shows that the 49ers really did believe in him at the time. Obviously, with the crowded depth chart, that dropped last year where Kevin Givens, his snap count only went to 28%. And similar to Jordan Willis, right? Jordan Willis in 2020, when the 49ers traded for him, played 39% of the defensive snaps. In 2021, that was down to 25%. But here's why I show optimism for both of them. At defensive tackle, the 49ers, now what happens? They lost DJ Jones. That's one guy that's gone. But the other guy that's gone for the 49ers is, I'm forgetting his name off the top of my head. But there's another defensive tackle that the 49ers lost. They retained Mo Hurst. They retained Kevin Givens. And they have.
I mean, is it Arden Key? I mean, Arden Key's a DN, but he was shifting inside a lot on pass rushing downs.
Contavious Street. That's the one that's gone this year. Yeah, Contavious Street. He's not there anymore. And Contavious Street was kind of like the DT2 behind DJ Jones last year. So now Kevin Givens gets some untapped potential where he now gets the reps needed to untap that type of potential. And at his frame, right, Kevin Givens is a 285 kind of guy where he doesn't necessarily have to play nose tackle. So Javon Kinlaw might not eat up the majority of his reps, right? And he might be able to rotate in and out there. And so I do think that there is some potential to be untapped there because of the increased snap count at defensive tackle. As for Jordan
And
Willis,
what if it's like, what if Kinlaw, we hope the knee is good,
right,
obviously, but if something goes on, I mean, that means Kevin Givens is going to be on the field even more, along
right,
with guys like
exactly.
Hassan Ridgeway.
And if Javon Kinlaw requires some seasoning in the early part of the season where they don't necessarily play him as much, guess what? Then it's going to be Kevin Givens and Art Armstead, at least on run defending downs, that you're going to see those two players kind of be in there. As for Jordan Willis, though, Jordan Willis showed out right in the limited time that he played last year. Had 3 sacks, only played about 25% of the defensive snaps last year. But guess what? What does Jordan Willis do best? He's a pass rusher, and so the one reason that I don't think that that a guy like Samson Ebicom might eat into Jordan Willis's snaps is because Jordan Willis at his 270-pound frame, I think he's better suited on the interior. And what's the one guy who was an interior pass rusher for the 49ers that worked well in the interior that left this offseason? The guy that you just mentioned, Arden Key, who worked best when he was working against guards. I think Jordan Willis now can take some of those snaps alongside Charles Omenihu, try and work on the interior right next to Nick Bosa, right next to Ark Armstead, and work in one-on-one situations to get to the pass rushers. So I do think that definitely could be helpful for a guy like Jordan Willis, who might see an increase in snap count up to that 39% that he saw back in 2020.
And I'm going to push back a little bit. I wouldn't rule out Jordan Willis, playing some snaps inside. But to be honest, I want Jordan Willis out wide in that wide 9 alignment personally, because he's got those explosive measurables. Off the top of my head, I think he ran like a 4.5 or a 4.6 40 at the combine.
Right.
Like, it was absolutely insane. So when that is shifted to the interior at defensive tackle, that doesn't show quite as much. I want to keep him out wide so he can kind of get that head start on the tackle, get that 2-step burst, and then he can either do, make his hand move or counter outside and have an inside pass rush. So that's where I'll push back a little bit. I want Willis at defensive end in that wide 9 alignment. But hey, we'll see. Did you have another defensive breakout player, or were those your guys right there?
I think those are 2 good pieces, or 2 good players that you just mentioned. I think those are both fair. Yeah.
Hey, well then let's go to the other side of the ball.
Yeah, I mean, I know that you like a couple of offensive players, but who is your breakout player for the 49ers on offense in 2021?
Ray McCloud. I love Ray McCloud. When we signed him, I was like, okay, special teamer. Then I put on the tape, right? I think this guy is a really good route runner. He's got exceptional shiftiness. And what I like with Ray, there's different levels of shiftiness, right? Ray can be running full speed and just plant his foot in the ground and make a sharp cut to make a dude miss. Like, he doesn't have to slow down and kind of chop his steps to make you miss. No, Ray will make you miss at full speed. And I'm expecting him to also get snaps as a running back. I'm expecting him to be almost like a baby Debo. Not in the sense that he's as physical as Debo Samuel, but almost like a third down version of Debo. Like, Ray McCloud, in my opinion, can be a better running back than JaMycal Hasty, in my opinion. So that's how I expect Ray to be used. I had a hot take when I called into Grant Cohn's show. Let me know how crazy you think this is. I think Ray is going to outgain Juwan Jennings in terms of like total yards. So rushing and receiving combined. That's how much I like Ray. I think both of them are going to, because they're completely different slot receivers, right? Juwan Jennings is your prototypical big slot. He's kind of slow, but he's a ferocious run blocker. And he's also got good route running, Juwan does, for a guy his size. On those option routes, he can, especially with Trey Lance, those out routes I feel like are going to be more common because Jimmy doesn't throw outside the numbers very well. Well, let me tell you what, Trey Lance will rip it outside the numbers. So I'm expecting Ray and Juwan to kind of split these slot snaps. And I think Ray is just a more dynamic player. So that's what's led to my bold prediction that Ray McCloud will outgain Juwan Jennings in terms of yards.
I mean, I think before I get to that point, I think Ray McCloud definitely possesses a lot of injury, right? I mean, we all know about the returning kind of stats, right? Ray McCloud, one of the most productive returners in the NFL last season, not only in the kick return, but in the punt return game. 38 punts returned, number one in the NFL. 367 yards on those punt returns, number one in the NFL. Then, guess what? It's just high volume? No. 9.7 yards per return on those punt returns. That was number three in the NFL. And then he was also pretty efficient in the kick return game. 35 kicks for 776 yards, third and fourth in the NFL, and then 22.2 yards per return, a good 15th in the NFL. So he was good on both facets, but like you said, there's a lot of potential in that receiving game. He's only 25 years old. He hasn't necessarily been used as much as a receiver in the Pittsburgh game. But when you compare Juwan Jennings and Ray McCloud, Ray McCloud had 39 catches for 277 yards last year on 66 targets. That's a ton of volume from a wide receiver number 4 out there in Pittsburgh. Juwan Jennings, though, had only 38 targets. He had 24 receptions on those 38 targets, 282 yards receiving. So when you look at it, 282, 277, they're fairly similar. And it's going to be interesting how the 49ers utilize Ray McCloud, right? Because when you're in an offense like Ben Roethlisberger, you're essentially capped. Because what does Ray McCloud do well? He runs. He's one of the better route runners, like you said. He was one of the better route runners last year, like you said. But your route running is capped when you have a quarterback that can only throw in the short distance. Whereas when you can utilize the speed that Ray McCloud has, I think that can be utilized at all three levels of the field on offense, which is where the intrigue comes with Ray McCloud. That's why Ray McCloud's catch, I think it's yards per catch, was only 7.5 or 7.1 last year. Really low.
And, let me touch on that real quick because I had to put, obviously I watched the tape on Ray McCloud, and the Steelers had him running so many underneath routes. Like it was drag routes, hitches. So it's like if you're catching or bubble screens. So if you catch a bubble screen, right, and then you get 7 yards out of it, that's a damn good play. You know what I'm saying? So, well, you're muted, Rohan, but
I just said it's essentially a rushing play. I agree. Yeah.
So it's like 7 yards a catch. That what he averaged in Pittsburgh is low, but if you look at what Pittsburgh asked him to do, you'll see that it made sense because they were, like I said, it was drag routes, hitches. I mean, he was buried on that depth chart out there in Pittsburgh because they had really good – Pittsburgh drafts really good wide receivers, right? They had Claypool, Juju, Deontay Johnson, James Washington was still out there. So you got 3 or 4 dudes in front of you. It's hard to produce a lot of production when you're buried on the depth chart and they're asking you to only run certain routes. Well, guess what? Now you got an offensive mind like Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah.
Things are going to open up. He's going to be getting end arounds. He snaps in the backfield. He's going to run, post routes, deep overs. I can already see it. And Ray, I'm excited. I think he's going to have a big year.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the comparison to him and Juwan Jennings, obviously completely different receivers. It'll be interesting because obviously Juwan Jennings was a great receiver for Jimmy Garoppolo, who breaks out well out of his routes well. Not necessarily the fastest, but I thought his breaking out of routes, he was pretty good. He runs fairly crisp routes, and I thought that
he does.
With Jimmy Garoppolo's ball placement, especially in the short and intermediate range, it was good on as a third down Mr. Reliable type of guy. But Ray McCloud obviously is completely different. It's going to be interesting which one wins the battle in training camp with Trey Lance at quarterback, where he can throw to all three distances of the field. I still think it'll be Juwan Jennings just because of the run blocking appeal that he possesses, which Ray McCloud at his smaller frame doesn't necessarily have. But as a receiver, it's going to be interesting for sure. But let me tell you my guy. Sticking with the receiver room, it's somewhat of the obvious pick, but I still think that it has to be said, and that's Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk and Trey Lance are like they've been everywhere together. They work out together. They're in Southern California together. Like they do whatever together. And Brandon Ayuk, it's crazy because he's had such a productive first 2 years, but still hasn't eclipsed 1,000 yards. And his rookie year only played 12 games because of injury. I think he had a hamstring issue. Had played in 12 games, started 11, 96 targets, 748 yards on 60 catches, 12 and a half. And then he also had 5 touchdowns there, with 2 rushing touchdowns. So 7 in total, 826 yards last year. So he improved, but that was also when he didn't necessarily have the most volume over the first half of the season. When you look at the second half of the season, he averaged 66.4 yards per game from week 7 on. You know what that means? Over a 17-game season, he's averaging 1,128 yards. That is eclipsing 1,000 yards. And with Trey Lance, with the increased volume, where he necessarily didn't have that volume this year, because when we look at it, I'll say this, it might seem a little crazy. In 12 games in 2020, he had 96 targets. That's 8 targets a game. In 17 games in 2021, he had 84 targets, less than 5 targets a game. And so, when a receiver improves, that doesn't necessarily make sense, which is why I think that target spike is going to reach over 1,000 or over 100 this year, which is where those catches are going to come, especially when the yards per catch are going to be higher with Trey Lance. So I think Brandon Ayuk is going to break out this season. I think that he definitely has the potential, and I think he's going to deserve a second contract from the 49ers with that shifty route running and the relationship with Trey Lance.
No doubt. And we remember he put on that shirt. I forget when it was. It was at the latter part of the season. Deep ball me, please. Because how many times have we seen Brandon Ayuk just open deep? He'll win his route. He's open, 30, 40 yards down the field, but the ball's not looking his way. Jimmy doesn't like to look deep. So, and then he throws his arms up, which is one of the reasons I think he was in the Shanahan doghouse. He was kind of showing up his quarterback, but it's like, I'm kind of in agreement with him, because it's like, dude, yeah, you're open. That could have been a tutty, but your quarterback doesn't want to throw you the rock. So I kind of got his frustration, but still, you're not supposed to show it. So I think that could be what kind of got him in the doghouse.
And I think Shanahan also, right? Shanahan loves competition. Brandon Ayuk, obviously with the slower training camp because of the hamstring injury that suffered in the 3rd preseason game. So slow start, which is probably what led to the buildup, because Shanahan wants you to obviously compete. But guess what? When he broke out last season, he really broke out. Not only did he break out as a receiver, but as a run blocker. Like, Brandon Ayuk was excited when he had run blocking plays that worked. So that's what I really thought was really, really that kind of really changed Brandon Ayuk's demeanor. Not only is he being so ferocious in the run game, but he's also putting more effort into his routes, and that just made him the complete receiver. I obviously am a huge fan of Brandon Ayuk. I think he's one of the better receivers, one of the more underrated receivers in the NFL, just because he plays behind Deebo Samuel. And so I think he's poised for a 1,000-yard season this year.
That'd be great. And 1,000 yards for a receiver is kind of that benchmark of like, oh, you're a 1,000-yard receiver. Right. You had a hell of a year. So if BA can get to 1,000 yards, that'd be absolutely amazing. And I love how Brandon Ayuk, he's going to be unlocked with Trey Lance, because Trey Lance, man, he's got a cannon on that right arm. So I'm expecting some big electric, just big play touchdowns coming from Brandon Ayuk.
Definitely.
But hey, why don't we shift to a little draft talk? How do you feel about that? And I know
you like that, but I love that too.
And I know you've been checking out wide receivers. I've already scouted a bunch of wide receivers. I put out my top 20 wide receiver prospect video. If you guys want to check that out, you can
go ahead,
in my
check
archive.
It out, because guys, everyone in the chat, Eric did a lot of work in that top 20 wide receivers. He didn't evaluate just 5 people, the top 5 in his group. No, he went through 20 players, evaluated all of them, and it's a great video. All of you guys should go check that out on Bay Area Baller channel.
Hey, and while we're on that, everyone subscribe to Rohan. Rohan's got an up-and-coming channel. The link is in the description. So do yourself a favor, because he's putting out great content. Click on that link. Subscribe to Rohan's channel, because we got to get those subs up. Rohan's killing it. He knows his stuff. But hey, which wide receiver prospects are you eyeing for the 49ers?
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of them, right? And the crazy part when you have such a talented wide receiver class is you get wide receivers of so many different calibers. You don't necessarily always see the deep threats, right? You see these high point receivers. You see receivers with big bodies. You see receivers who have a combination like Christian Watson, 6'4", 208, but still runs like a fast freak, right? And so that's what I really like about receiver classes like this. So many diverse receivers where you can just fill out your room. And looking just in the early rounds, right? Guys that pop out to me. I know a guy that a lot of people liked, but probably goes earlier than expected now is Sky Moore out of Western Michigan. Probably projected in the 2nd round earlier, maybe even in the 3rd round earlier, maybe now 2nd round. potentially even first round. I think Sky Moore was definitely a good talent. But I mean, there's guys like Khalil Shakir out of Boise State. There's guys like
I love
George
Shakir.
Pickens.
When that guy catches the ball, Rohan, he turns into a running back.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, when you see guys like him, you see guys like George Pickens, who I think is going to be one of the like he's coming off the major injury, right? But I think before that, like he was just such a great player that like a team, whoever gets him, probably gets him in a nice draft position where they can call him a value pick.
A
And
lot of upside with George
definitely,
Pickens. I mean, if he
definitely.
was fully healthy for his collegiate career, we could be talking about, him as a top 3 wide receiver in this class.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. And the thing is, like, when I evaluate receivers for the 49ers, I'm looking at the later round guys, right? And I know a couple later round guys. Like, I try and get a receiver in most of my mock drafts nowadays. I know a lot of guys like Tyquan Thornton, the 4.2, whatever, 4.26, 4.28 speed. But to me, the guy that I like is Danny Gray at SMU. Possesses that burner 4.2, 4.3 speed, but he's 6 foot, 186, good enough build where he can operate out of the slot for the 49ers and possesses true deep burner speed alongside pretty good route running. And I think that really works well, right? Shanahan loves route runners, but imagine having the speed to top the route running ability that possesses something the 49ers don't really have in this offense currently. And that's something that just adds an extra element. I spoke earlier about how the 49ers love a diverse wide receiver room. I think Danny Gray complements that really well. But you're the wide receiver god. Who do you like for the 49ers in this draft?
I mean, me and you both like Danny Gray. I like me some Danny Gray. And because he's that deep threat that,
Right.
like you said, just the 4.3 speed. He's a track guy, and it shows on the football field. It translates well. This guy's explosive. He's got the acceleration. And man, PFF had this guy so low when I started evaluating wide receivers. Danny Gray was so low on this list. I put a star by his name and drew an arrow because I was like, no way should he be this low. And then Rappaport puts out a tweet that they have him on NFL Network as like the 64th wide receiver, or excuse me, the 64th overall prospect. So practically like end of round 2, early round 3. And I was like, damn, I thought we could get this guy later, maybe round 4. I was kind of eyeing that round 4, but it's like, man, it's like, I don't want to take him at 61. That feels a little too rich. But now it's like, okay, we got those 2 third-round picks. At the end of the 3rd round, one of them's compensatory. That might be the sweet spot where if you want to grab Danny Gray and you want that speed, you're going to have to nab him at the end of the 3rd.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, Danny Gray is like, it's not just like content creators or whoever coming with this buzz. Danny Gray is getting top 30 visits. The Colts just called him in for a top 30 visit. And by the way, guys, for those of you that don't know, a top 30 visit just essentially means a team can call in 30 prospects of their choice to come and have an in-house visit. It doesn't have to be the top 30 players, but Danny Gray getting a top 30 visit, that's some significant news. And he got one from the Indianapolis Colts recently.
Yeah, but I'm going to keep it moving because I got a few more wide receivers who I think the 49ers should be looking at. And let's start off with the kid out of Cincinnati, Alec Pierce. And I know Crocker likes him too. Croc was hyping him up while he was talking to Grant the other day, and I was like, ooh, Croc, I also like me some Alec Pierce. What I see from Pierce is, I've said this before, but I think he's like the George Kittle of wide receivers because he's got the size, like he's 6'3", muscular, but he's got the speed, and then the way he plays after the catch is physical. Just like I know how Kyle Shanahan likes his receivers or likes his tight ends. The guy fights for yards, and then he ran well. I didn't know he was going to run this 4.4. I think it was a 4.4. I'm going off the top of my head, but he ran really well.
4.41, yeah.
4.41. I mean, that's blazing.
So, I didn't think he ran that fast until Combine just whoa. That wowed me.
Well, I mean, at Cincinnati, I was seeing him continuously win deep down the field. Like Cincinnati and Ritter, Alec Pierce was Ritter's deep ball target, right? Forgive me. What's the Cincinnati quarterback's first name?
Desmond Ritter.
Desmond Ritter. Yes, Desmond Ritter, man. He loved looking Alec Pierce's way because the guy just keeps winning down the field. Hell, I would throw it to Alec Pierce too. And I got my draft notes right here, Rohan, and I got a few other guys that I wanted to talk about. Reggie Roberson is another burner out of SMU. He was the other guy, but I had him more as like a special teamer because he was really good in the kickoff game. I don't think he had quite the receiving prowess as Danny Gray. That's why I preferred Danny Gray. But Ty Freifogel out of Indiana, I like him as a later guy. 6'3", good body. He's polished, smart guy. I'm looking right at my list, and I'm Romeo Dobbs. I've been pounding the table. I like Romeo Dobbs out of Nevada.
Yeah,
he was Carson Strong's deep threat, and you can see the theme. I think me and you both, Rohan, are looking for that field stretcher for this team, someone who can threaten vertically and open up some things underneath for Debo and Ayuk to work the intermediate parts of the field. Not saying that Ayuk and Debo can't go deep, but a true burner field stretcher. That's kind of what I'm looking at. And Romeo Dobbs, I feel I could also fulfill that role, just like Danny Gray, just like Alec Pierce. So those are three receivers that I really like. And I think, hey, 49ers, keep your eye on these guys. Maybe like round where you've done more mocks than me. Where has Dubs been going in the mocks?
He goes normally round 3, round 4. So it'd be a mid-round pick if the 49ers look to select Romeo Dobbs.
Okay, no doubt. Yeah, those are the guys I'm looking at. Let's see what the next topic we got on deck is. Oh, yeah. We're going to the pass rushers. This has been my last study. This last week, I've been going through, checking out all these pass rushers. And, man, there's a couple I really like, Rohan, but I don't think they're going to make it to pick 61.
Yeah.
We can touch on them real quick. I mean, you want to start off? You want to start off first? You want me to take the lead on this one?
You can go ahead, and then I'll follow with mine.
Please. Okay. So, Boye Mafe, man, this guy, he would have been the perfect Leo, because when I'm thinking pass rusher for the 49ers, I'm thinking more of a speed rusher.
Right,
Rohan.
Exactly.
Kind of like what they wanted D Ford to be, but due to injuries, couldn't quite fulfill. So I'm still looking for that speed rusher. And Boye Mafe, he looks like a good one, man. This guy's got the 4.57 speed combination.
Definitely.
Yeah. And then the other guy, Arnold Ebiketie.
Yeah.
Ebiketie, I mean, when I was watching Ebiketie and Boye Mafe, like I watched them back to back, and it was like, it almost looks like the same guy to me, Rohan. Like both of them just look like athletic freaks that could fulfill that Leo speed rushing role opposite Bosa. But man, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think they're going to make it to pick 61.
Doesn't look like it. I mean, Boye Mafe might even be a first-round pick. Ebiketie seems to go early to mid-second round in the mocks that I've seen at least. So, yeah, it doesn't seem like both of them are going to be available for the 49ers. When I was looking, Ebiketie, at least originally, was a guy who I thought could be definitely a good 49er. Now it doesn't seem like at least that's realistic. Damn. So looking kind of like a little bit down the board in a way. I know a lot of guys have projected Kingsley Enagbare out of South Carolina to the 49ers. I think that he'd be a solid fit. Obviously, Javon Kinlaw would probably.
He's not really a speed rusher, though, right, Rohan?
He isn't, but Javon Kinlaw probably would argue for him. The 49ers haven't had great success with that. Obviously, Mike McGlinchey argued for Aaron Banks, and he didn't play in year one. But looking specifically at speed rushers, I kind of like the guys in the mid rounds, in the round 3, round 4 area. And that's guys that I'm thinking D'Angelo Malone, Western Kentucky, 6'5", 240 pounds, little bit of a leaner frame, but that's a speed rusher that can be a developmental project opposite of Nick Bosa. I agree with you. Nick Bosa at 262 pounds, one of the best power rushers in the NFL. You want to complement that with a guy like speed. The 49ers tried it with D Ford. Obviously, D Ford didn't work because of the injury history, but there are definitely a good amount of speed rushers in this class. Another guy that I like personally, Cincinnati's Myjai Sanders. If he goes to that 3rd, 4th round, around that 247, 260 range, somewhere around there. another speed rusher, can work on the interior, did that at Cincinnati, but also can work on the edge. And that's something the 49ers like, right? That versatility on the defensive line where they can slot in guys. I think Myjai Sanders fits the bill for that.
Yeah, I like Myjai Sanders. My notes on him, he had a good hesitation pass rush where he just hits you with that stutter, right? You don't know if he's going to have an inside move or if he's going to rush outside or if he's just going to bull rush you. I liked Myjai Sanders. He's got good hands. Right when the tackle tries to punch him, he can swat him away. I mean, Nick Bosa has the best hands that I've seen. Nick Bosa has phenomenal hands. And that's something when I'm looking at pass rush, that's one thing that I'm big on. You got to be good with your hands. You got to have your rip moves and just know how to get offensive linemen's hands off of you. And so I like the hand use by Myjai Sanders. But Drake Jackson out of USC, I also like this guy, man. He has an array of pass rushing moves. We're talking spin moves. He's got the hezzy. He's also got really good hands. I think that's why I put a star by him on my list. But he's not a pure speed guy. Like, I like him. I think he's good player, but I wouldn't say he's got that top end speed that for a pass rusher that is. But I'm still intrigued. I like Drake Jackson. And there's two other guys that I want to talk about in terms of pass rushers.
Go for it.
And that's Josh Paschal out of Kentucky. I really like this guy, Josh Paschal. I think he's silky smooth. Rohan, when I put on the tape of Paschal, the guy looks like a 10-year veteran. Like, it looks like he is an NFL player that was playing in college last year. That's what it looked like to me. This dude played like a veteran, just knew how to beat guards. He's so good against the run. I think he only had like 5.5 sacks his last year.
Right.
But he had 15 tackles for a loss. Like, come on, dude. That's insane. So Josh Paschal, I really like him. Again, he's like Drake Jackson. I don't think he's that pure speed Leo pass rusher that I'm kind of eyeing for the 49ers, but I would not be mad if they took Josh Paschal because I think he's a damn good football player. And Rohan, I'm going to ask you, where have you seen Josh Paschal going in some of these mocks?
Yeah, so Pascal's available sometimes in the second round. I think he goes late second to early third round. So he would probably, like, if the 49ers wanted to trade back from 61, acquire extra capital, and then potentially get a guy like Josh Paschal, I think that could be the case. If edge doesn't be as hot of a commodity in the second round, he could potentially fall to the third as well. So it's unknown in a way, because obviously it's what do teams want out of the edge position. A guy like we always see. Teams reach, right? Teams always go with the guy. We saw like Leatherwood go at 17 last year when he was a projected third round pick. Like, that's something that's just the nature of the NFL draft. So you'll see players kind of go ahead, players fall back. Hopefully the 49ers get one of those value players, be it at 61, 93, or 105.
And you know what? I got to ask you about a player that I had a tough time evaluating. It was hard for me to get a read on this guy. He's a pure speed guy, but I want to hear what you got to say, or if you've even checked him out. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but Nick Bonito,
edge, Oklahoma,
right?
Yeah.
He's the edge guy. He's got that burst at the line, but I'm not sure how he'll hold up in the run game.
Yeah.
He looks kind of slight. I think he might only be like a pure pass rusher that comes in on third down. But I mean, he was a tough for me to get a read on. I mean, at Oklahoma, he was lining up everywhere. He was taking snaps out like middle linebacker, it looked like, when I had on the tape.
Yeah. He played in Oklahoma runs they don't run an NFL type of defense, right? So they move players around. I mean, I saw that at Cincinnati as well when I was evaluating Myjai Sanders, because you see Myjai Sanders sometimes on third down or on early downs dropping into pass coverage. That should not be happening with a guy of Myjai Sanders' caliber. And so it is different. It's interesting. I think Nick Bonito is more projection than talent at the moment, because obviously the athleticism is kind of his appeal. You said he's a speed rusher. I agree. The athleticism is kind of the appeal right now, but I do think that it kind of depends. I do think that he might fit better in a 3-4 because he had the linebacker snaps as an outside linebacker where you rush the pass and maybe play a little more versatile at that smaller frame. And with the athleticism that Nick Bonito has, they might just want him maybe in run situations, play as an outside linebacker and use that speed to go get tackles rather than having to rely on strength at the defensive line and then drop him down. So I think he fits better in a 3-4 than a 4-3. I'm not the highest guy on Nick Bonito. I do prefer a guy like Myjai Sanders for the 49ers. I think that Myjai Sanders is a little, like, they play at the same size. I do think, though, that Myjai Sanders is a little better of a pass rusher at the moment. And when you look at both players, not necessarily the best in run defense. So they're essentially like third down type of pass rushers, similar to how the 49ers have used their rotational pass rushers. And I think Myjai Sanders provides a little more at the moment, and potentially even a little more upside as a pass rusher. So that's kind of my view on Nick Bonito. But he is he could definitely develop. I mean, anybody with Chris Cosera can develop. So that's my take on it.
That's facts. And no, I'm with you. I think I got Myjai Sanders ahead of Nick Bonito as well. But I'll tell you my last pass rusher that I want to touch on,
Go
who
for it.
I think I like more than both of those guys, and it's Sam Williams out of Ole Miss. Sam Williams.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
got to shout out to that Niner guy because that Niner guy put me on to him, said, hey, you got to check out the tape on Sam Williams. And I know he's got some off-field stuff, but the charges were dropped. So that's always, it's a tricky situation. And it feels like
Right.
the 49ers have stayed away
From those type of people. Yeah.
from those type of players ever since the Reuben Foster thing. But hey, I'm telling you, Sam Williams, I would think I would look past it. I don't know the exact situation of what happened when he was in college, but the charges were dropped, and I think the dude's just a fucking hell of a football player, Rohan. Like I think he's legitimately like a first round talent that I see going in like the third or fourth round. Correct me if I'm wrong. Where has Sam Williams been coming off the board?
Yeah, exactly. Third round, maybe early fourth round at times. And Sam Williams is somewhat of a similar player. I don't necessarily think he projects well against the run at the moment. He has the potential, but I don't think he necessarily projects well against the run. But athlete. 4.46, 40 at the combine as an edge rusher. That is unheard of. Like, we had Amari Barno run crazy, right? And Sam Williams is 6'4, 260. Like, he's a big guy running that fast. That's crazy. So a lot of people are definitely going to go with the projection that Sam Williams provides as an edge rusher.
I'll take him at 61, Rohan. I don't give a shit. I want Sam Williams on my team. This dude's big. He's physical. He's got really good hands, which, as I've already talked about, the hand use for defensive linemen is a premium for myself. He's got an array of pass rush moves. I've seen him dip down low to get under bigger offensive linemen. Sam Williams, shout out to that Niner guy for saying, hey, you better check out Sam Williams. You're going to like what you see. And I did. Sam Williams, Niners, go fucking draft this guy because he'll get after the quarterback.
And I mean, like, to your point, I don't think that he will be a 49er just because of the off-field concern. We haven't really seen the 49ers go after a guy of that caliber since Reuben Foster and his issues. They've shied away from that type of player. And
but if the charges are dropped, Rohan, I don't like holding stuff against individuals where nothing came out of it. I mean, maybe, a lot of these teams are probably digging more behind the scenes to find out what really happened and whatnot. I don't know. But what I saw on the field was absolutely phenomenal. And he was so far down this list. It's like, dog, this guy's not a fourth round talent. This dude is a second round talent, at the least.
Right. I agree. He definitely has, it's the athlete, right? The athlete that increases the projection. I am interested to see where he goes. Me personally, I do have Sanders over a guy like Sam Williams, but I think that both in this system, both could work for sure. Like, they'd play similar roles in that they'd probably be third down rushers, but I think in this system, both could work for sure.
Yeah, no, they both have the tools, the size, speed, and just overall pass rush ability, especially with a guy like Chris Kosirik could turn
Right.
either one of them, Myjai Sanders or Sam Williams into stars, in my
Right.
opinion.
Right.
And why don't we get to the last topic while I got you, Rohan? And it's going to be, what is it? NFL prospects who the 49ers have interviewed. And actually, let me pull it up here because
Go for it.
I know there's some names that me and you both like that I think we're going to want to touch on here. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So here's the list of the 49ers pre-draft interviews. And hey, second name on there, Danny Gray. We've already touched on him. Me and you both like Danny Gray. And apparently the 49ers. And let me tell you something, Rohan. I had to go back and figure out, okay, when the 49ers interview a player, what does it mean? Are they really interested in this guy? Is it smoke screens? So I went back and looked at who have the 49ers interviewed previously. So in 2020, we had pre-draft interviews with Salvon Ahmed, who ended up becoming an undrafted 49er who we cut and went to Miami. Brandon Ayuk, we had interviews with him. Charlie Warner, another guy we drafted, 49ers interviewed him before the draft. And then at the combine, 49ers interviewed Jawan Jennings. So we're looking at this list. I can tell you the 49ers are going to draft somebody on this list. I can't tell you exactly who, but they bring in whoever they interview. It's somebody who they're looking at because just the numbers say that that's what they've done in the past. 2021, they interviewed Diamador Lenore, drafted him. Obviously, Trey Lance, which they had the third pick. So I mean, they could have interviewed whoever the hell they wanted to when you have the third pick. But I just wanted to touch on that as a precursor before we look at this list because
and one other precursor real quick. I want to say two players. Just because they don't get drafted by the 49ers doesn't mean they won't find their way back with the team. Charles Omenihu was a guy the 49ers had interested in prior to the draft. Guess what? They traded a 6th round pick to acquire him from the Houston Texans. Another guy is a guy who just came in for a visit in Kimoko Toure. He had I think it was an interview with the 49ers prior to the draft. Now he's back here in the building with a workout.
They need to sign him. They need to sign him, Rohan, because Jesse, shout out to Last Second Sports. He was talking up Toure. So I was like, okay, let me put on the tape because I didn't really know what Toure had to offer. And I liked what I saw. He would be a good, just pure pass rusher to put opposite
He would take
Bosa.
Edge rusher off the top list of needs to somewhere in the middle because he would project as a day one starter or compete at least for a day one spot with Samson Ebukam.
Oh, yeah. No, on third down, I would prefer Toure over Ebukam, in my opinion. Yeah, but looking at this list, okay, K'Lon Barnes, Danny Gray, who we know me and you both like, and then Marcus Jones. I know 49ers Twitter has to be enamored. They got to be elated with the fact that the 49ers are interviewing Marcus Jones because I haven't quite dove into the cornerback film yet. It's on the to-do list, but I know he's a good returner and just a good slot player that a lot of 49ers fans are like they're enamored with him.
And me too. Yeah, I am too.
Oh, yes. Okay, I like that. And then this next guy, okay, Samori Toure. When I heard we had interviewed him, I said, okay, let me put on the tape. And first film that popped up was him. It was a small school. Was he at Montana or Wyoming? It was one of the two.
Oh, I think it's Montana. I think.
Okay. Before he transferred to Nebraska, I should know this, but he was a big-time wide receiver for a small school. Transferred to Nebraska, and this guy, he's got some of that size-speed combination that's pretty tantalizing.
And it was Montana Grizzlies. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah. Thank you for checking that out. But Samori Toure, man, this is a guy who just came onto my radar yesterday as I'm like, oh, 49ers interviewed this guy. Okay, what's he got? And I was like, whoa, this guy's got something to offer. So Samori Toure, another intriguing wide receiver. I think he's a later round guy.
Yeah.
And if they snagged him, I'd be happy because I like what I saw from the tape. Yeah,
And
Alex
then,
Wright, defensive end from UAB. I watched him and he looked all right, but nothing really popped up. Nothing really wowed me. So if it doesn't really wow me, I'm kind of like, I'm kind of cool off you. Like he didn't give me, Sam Williams vibes or my J Sanders vibes. Anyway, I'm just rambling at this point, Rohan. Jump in. Anyone on this list that gets you
yeah,
excited?
and there is one, and I do really hope the 49ers, like if the 49ers are going to go in this route, I hope this is the guy that they get. And that is center Cam Jurgens out of Nebraska. He is by far the best athlete at center in this draft. I know he seems a bit undersized, but one of the best athletes. And what do you need in a zone blocking scheme like the 49ers run? A great athlete at the center position. And Cam Jurgens possesses that skill. Now, the one caveat I have to that is the 49ers really like to address the center position in free agency with veterans, right? Who did they first sign when Kyle Shanahan came over? Weston Richburg, 5 years, $47.5 million. Then it was Ben Garland for a short period of time, but then they transitioned to Alex Mack. They really like these veterans that they like to implement at center because they like someone to lead this offensive line at the center position. That's why I'm really intrigued by JC Treader. But should they choose to go the younger route, like they've gone all offseason with signings like Trevarius Ward, Ray McLeod, and all of the above with their special teamers, I do think that Cam Jurgens fits the bill as a good center that they can learn from Alex Mack for a year, grow a little more in terms of weight, and then join the 49ers in their zone blocking scheme next season as their starting center.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, because I mean, we know Alex Mack. He doesn't have. This might be his last year, and it's not even 100% guaranteed that he is back. I know. It's been rumored, and we
Right.
expect Mack to come back, and I hope he comes back.
Mm-hmm.
But absolutely, you got to have an eye towards the future. You like Cam Jurgens, so you perked up my ears. I'm interested, and
then
I just
the other
spotted.
guy that go ahead.
I just spotted a running back on this list that I know a lot of 49ers fans love, and it's James Cook. James Cook, man, obviously Dalvin Cook's little brother, and they got a similar running style. It's almost like James Cook is like the third down back version of Dalvin Cook. A little bit smaller, maybe a little bit slighter, really good pass catcher. Another one cut runner, which I like in the Shanahan scheme, right? On that outside zone, you're pushing it out, you're pressing it out, and then you got to stick your foot in the ground and get it upfield. And James Cook can do that. So James, that's a running back I really like. Man, what round have you been seeing in the mocks? Where's James Cook kind of been going?
James Cook, I mean, I haven't paid attention too much just because I think he goes a little too early for my liking to draft a wide or running back because I feel like there are other better players. But James Cook definitely could fit. He obviously met with the 49ers. I think he probably goes in the third or fourth round, probably the fourth round, I'd assume.
I'd love him in the fourth.
Yeah. So I think he goes probably early fourth round, maybe late third round, depending on how the running back board shapes out. But yeah, I mean, the reason that, like, I wrote an article maybe a couple of weeks ago on running backs that I'd like with the 49ers. And James Cook was one of the guys on the list. I think it was after the combine. And the reason that I said James Cook really could pop out to me, what did he do over there at Georgia? Not only did he play in a running back committee, but he excelled in a running back committee. 113 carries, 728 yards. That's 6.4 yards per carry. At Georgia, when you're playing SEC competition, I thought that was very valuable. And James Cook, 4.42 40-yard dash, pretty fast at that 5'11", 190 frame. And people are like, wow, 5'11", 190, that's a little concerning, isn't it? But guess what? That is bread and butter for the 49ers because they run running back by committee. They don't ever overwork a back unless there's injuries, and that's where James Cook fits in. With you running back by committee, you preserve his body a little more, have him utilize the skills that he already has at that smaller frame, and now you get the best of both worlds where you get to utilize James Cook's speed and all, and James Cook has his body preserved so he can have a longer NFL career. I think that that's a win-win for both sides. Possesses the good vision, that one-cut ability. I think that you pointed that out. I think that that's what James Cook is good at. Showed it on Georgia tape. That's exactly why he had the 6.4 yards per carry, and I think that that works well with our scheme.
Hey, Rohan, that's all I got for you today, man. I want you to shout out your channel. Everyone watching this video, go into the description, click on my man Rohan's link and subscribe to his channel because he's absolutely killing it. But Rohan, why don't you let the audience know kind of what you're doing on your channel and what they can expect from you in the future?
Right. So I cover the 49ers web zone. For those of you that don't know, make sure you search them up. My content will be on there for sure. I try and upload daily content, article wise, for those that like to read. And then on my channel, I'm pretty active. I like getting guests like Eric and all these well known 49er guys that just know their stuff about not only the 49ers, but just the NFL in general. Some of the smartest minds here on the internet. Come on my channel. Anyone's welcome. And I just like to produce 49ers content. I try and stay up to tune with the news and just produce an unbiased analysis on certain like occasions, like the Deebo Samuel news, not necessarily this, but just his contract negotiations and all the different topics. I also host my own podcast with Marco Martinez, one of the smarter NFL minds, especially when it comes to the draft. So be sure to hit
I love
him
your
up.
guys' pod. I'm a big Marco fan. Marco knows his shit. You know your stuff. That's why I've been tuning into your guys' podcast.
Thanks, man. And for those of you guys that don't follow me on Twitter, Rohan Sports 27, be sure to hit it. And thank you, Eric, for having me on. Obviously, a great show. And guys, before I get off here, Bay Area Baller 18, you guys better hit that subscribe button over there. He's got great content coming at you, a great intro. Make sure you follow him on Twitter. Make sure you subscribe to his channel. Let's get this channel growing for sure.
Yeah, man. I just surpassed 900 subs, which was a big milestone for myself. But hey, I want to get to that 1,000. When I get that 1,000, you best believe we got some giveaways popping off. There's gonna be a party going down. So let's get Bay Area Baller. Now I'm talking about myself in the third person. Let's get to 1,000 subs. All right.
Let's do it.
And then we're gonna get Rohan there too because he's the man. But hey, Rohan, thanks for coming on. I love talking ball with you. And any last thoughts you want to share with the audience?
Go Niners. Hope Deebo's a 49ers for a while now.
49ers for life, Deebo. Let's get it, baby. Thanks for coming by, fellas. Catch y'all next time.